All right, so we are here with Wyatt, our Daredevil specialist on this channel. And on the 24th, we also, like I said, got Daredevil Born Again Season 2, the first episode. And since then, episodes 2, 3, 4 has now released. So, Wyatt, what are your general feelings about this season so far? What do you think the overall reception of it's going to be?
So, I would say I'm the most qualified Daredevil specialist here on the Sacred Rewatch podcast. I love the
sure.
Netflix show, so I have a very high standard for what I think Disney Plus needs to do for Daredevil Born Again, as it's kind of, not so much a sequel, more as a continuation of the Netflix stuff. And I remember when season one came out, it was originally announced to be a 16 episode season that cut down to 8 for 2 seasons. And my original, I would say, sort of like off rip opinion about Born Again season 2 is through your first 3 episodes, that definitely feels like the case. Like, your first 3 episodes kind of feel like the midway point of a season, which I do think gives a sort of weak start to the show. But from what I've seen from a ton of like reviewers and like the people who got the pre-screenings, the first 3 episodes are the weakest. And what I could definitely say is if those are the weakest episodes of the show is going to be very, very good. And after watching episode 4 about a week ago, I could definitely say that was one of the best episodes of probably Born Again in general. And I would say one of the top episodes in the Daredevil show, counting the Netflix stuff. I think they're doing a really good job at capitalizing on what they know the fans want to see from Daredevil. Like we've seen a lot of really good one-shot hallway fights, a lot of like these long kind of fights between Daredevil and the people he's going against, which I think all the fans love those. That's what they want to see from the Daredevil shows. The Netflix show had it. Born Again season 1 did a little bit of it, but season 2 is doing a really good job of kind of capitalizing on that. I do enjoy the whole Mayor Fist vibe they're going for and the whole anti-vigilante task force piggybacking off of that in season 1. I think they're doing a good job of following up on it in season 2. I think what a lot of fans are really liking about this season so far, and what I think is going to be a huge focal point for the rest of the season, is Bullseye as a character, is the writing for his character, and I think Wilson or William Bethel is the name of the actor, or something like that. He's nailing the character right on the head. And Daredevil, or not Daredevil, Bullseye in the comics he's very, very mustache twirly, evil to be evil. I'm pretty sure there's a couple famous comic runs where he has like a brain tumor and that just makes him even more evil for the fun of it. When it comes to a TV show, that's something that it's a little hard to portray accurately in terms of just evil to be evil. And like we saw in season 3, they show Bullseye struggles a lot with his sort of like, not so much OCD, but his sort of personality disorder. And so far, within the 2 episodes, we've seen a lot of him in season, I guess, 5, technically, or season 2 of Born Again. They've really done a really good job at writing this character. He's so sort of complex in terms of, yes, he's evil and he's an awful person, but it's not so much mustache twirly as much as it is a sort of like derangement to a disorder. And they're doing this really, really awesome balance with sort of like his redemption arc, but they're doing an awesome thing with the character where they're not so much redeeming him in terms of like, this guy's a good guy now, but they're more so putting him on a redemption path of his own, which as a viewer, you understand this guy is still crazy, but you understand why to him, he seems like he's redeeming himself and he's doing all the right things. It released on TikTok or Netflix, like Marvel put it out, this very opening scene of season 4, which is a Bullseye, pretty much a one-shot fight scene with him in a diner. One of the most entertaining fight scenes I've seen in Daredevil, because one thing you really don't get with the character of Daredevil is that sort of like quippiness that you see from a lot of heroes like Spider-Man, just because it's not who he is. So when they have this Bullseye fight, he is a lot more, not so much charming or charismatic because he's a complete psychopath, but he's more interacting and talking while he's fighting. And it's very, very fun. And it works very well with the character and the theme they've kind of set up. Also, I do think the one thing that Disney's doing really well compared to so much of Netflix is they're taking a little bit more creative approaches to, I guess, the way to put it. Whereas you've seen them in the trailers and stuff. They're doing a lot of like cuts to someone posing as Fisk, like the parody of him doing like the evil news reports and talking what's going on in the city. Those are very, very fun. And the way they're cutting those into the episode to kind of explain what's going on has been really fun and really interesting to watch. So I do think that I would definitely say that after episode 4, I'm extremely excited for the rest of the season. Because the first 3 episodes, you would watch it and you would have this sort of like, not empty feeling, but the end credits would roll. You'd be like, oh, okay, that was cool. I would have liked a little more. But after episode 4, I'm ecstatic for the rest of the show. The one kind of big complaint I have isn't so much for the show itself, but it is the marketing for the show. all throughout the marketing in the trailer, the first trailer that came out, and even in the leaks beforehand, they teased and showed that Jessica Jones is going to be returning reprising her role as Jessica Jones. I can't remember the actress's name, but she'll be coming back for the show. However, we're 4 episodes in and she hasn't even showed up in the slightest. So it does feel like Marvel is kind of doing that thing they do where they show you a character, get you all excited for it, and then they're only really in the last 2 episodes. So I am a little you kind of every time a character walks into a room and you get like the shot of shoes, and you're like, "Who is that?" You're first, "Oh, Jessica Jones." Now it's this character I've seen before. Actually, they're also doing a really good job, I think. At like I kind of mentioned earlier, they know what the fans want. And from Born Again season 1, I can't quite remember the characters' names, but there was Matt's therapist girlfriend, his retired cop friend, and their new lawyer friend. They have drastically reduced their roles from the first season, which I think is very good. Because, like I said, it's not so much a redoing of Daredevil, it's a continuation of the Netflix show. So the people we care about are, the characters we saw 10 years ago. So it's not interesting, but it's good to see Marvel sort of keeping them around and having them involved in the story whatsoever, but not so much such a heavy focus on the characters we're not that attached to. I think Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, this has been one of the better portrayals we've seen of him. His size, when I watched the first episode, I was like, they're doing something. Because Vincent D'Onofrio, he's a big guy, but he's not that big. So what to do it? Yeah, they have him wearing some sort of like prosthetics in his suit to make him look big because he is this hulking figure in the show, which is very cool to see because Kingpin in the comic is massive. So far where we're at, I won't like spoil too much of it.
You can go full in spoilers.
So episode 4 has Bullseye and Matt really butting heads for the first time after Bullseye kills Foggy at the start of episode 1 or season 1. So they're doing this whole discussion, and Bullseye wants to kill Fisk because he's crazy pretty much, and Matt's like, you can't let that happen because then Fisk becomes a martyr. So we get this whole episode of Bullseye fighting the task force at the first episode, or the very start of the episode, which is amazing. We get another great fight between Bullseye and Matt in his apartment. And then in the end, Bullseye shows up to Kingpin's fight. And, he tries to kill Kingpin and Vanessa. You think he falls short. He throws like this snow globe pretty much at Vanessa and it breaks. And then the reveal at the end of the episode is Vanessa has this giant piece of glass in her head. And I don't think she's dead because it's Marvel. No one's dead till you see the funeral scene and the grave. But the show has the great possibility to do what I hope they're going to do, which is now Kingpin has lost his one sort of like humanity. So we have this great opportunity for 5 episodes or 4 episodes left. We have full on Kingpin with no remorse, nothing holding him back, nothing kind of keeping him grounded, going against Bullseye and Daredevil, which I think can lead to a lot of really, really great, interesting things in the rest of the show, especially the fight scenes. Because, Kingpin hasn't fought anyone all Born Again because, he's the mayor. And I do see a lot of discourse sort of online and all that like this is the 5th season of Daredevil and Kingpin is still the main bad guy, which I actually usually would agree with, but I think it's worked quite well in the way they portrayed Kingpin in general. In the first couple of episodes of Daredevil seasons, he was this underground crime boss. And, come the 3rd season, he was out of prison, sort of not in the public, not well received by the public, but he legally was out of prison and there's nothing Matt could do about it as Daredevil. So they took the kind of more lawyer Daredevil route. And then seeing him as the mayor it's a much different angle that Matt has to take as Daredevil to kind of take him down because now he has this whole city backing him. So I'm very interested to see where they go with the rest of the show. I actually, originally was very, very annoyed. I remember texting our group chat like, dude, these trailers are very much teeing up a Bullseye redemption arc. Like, this is crazy. You can't do this.
Yeah.
But the angle they've taken of him sort of like, because he's convinced himself that Vanessa making him kill Foggy ruined his humanity. So to redeem himself, he has to go kill Fisk and Vanessa, which, it's not. He's just crazy killing people. But he's doing a great job of portraying that in the acting that he actually genuinely believes this is how he redeems himself. And in that diner room fight scene, he's talking to some civilian and he's this great line of, don't worry, I'm one of the good guys. And like he gives his little smirk. You're like, this dude's crazy.
Is that a reference to Ben Affleck Daredevil?
What?
The I'm not the bad guy line? Was that
know.
a callback?
It might have been. I didn't even think about that when I saw it the first time.
Right? Might be.
But I think they've done a great job with the because last season 1, you had John Bernthal's Punisher as your sort of complimentary character to Matt, who people loved. And I think they've done a great job at turning Bullseye into a character that you actually not so much rooting for, but every time he pops up on screen, you get a little excited. Oh, here's this guy. because we haven't really seen a lot of him outside of season threes of Netflix. And in season three of Netflix, he also wasn't really Bullseye. He was kind of just Agent Poindexter who was slowly losing his mind, and then kind of he did all that stuff with the Daredevil suit on, which was cool. But he hadn't really achieved like Bullseye status, so it's really cool to actually see him as a kind of vigilante in his own right, going against the Fisk's task force, and Fisk is as the mayor. So I'm curious to see on kind of where the rest of the season goes, how they wrap it up. I know Jessica Jones is going to show up at some point, so I'm interested to see how that tie-in happens, or at least when that happens, because it is kind of getting to the point where now you're just kind of waiting for it instead of the actual payoff of it happening. So I am curious where the rest of the season holds. I think people are going to really like the rest of the show, especially like I said earlier. If the first 3 episodes are the weakest, it's going to be a good show. I do think it is better than season one. I think season one was not so much boring, but it had a little like the Muse plotline in season one. I think was a little weak and didn't really get the full arc that people wanted to see. And the Fisk mayor plotline also, you could kind of tell was meant for 2 seasons at the end of season one. Like nothing had really happened much there. So I am curious to see how that goes, because we do know from things like the Spider-Man trailer, what the show writers have said, that Fisk is not the mayor at the end of the season. So I am very excited to see that. And like we got told a couple weeks ago, there is a season three. So I am very curious for the potential of a season three without Fisk being a main bad guy, because I do think a lot of fans would like to see that played out more with Daredevil. I just can't off the top of my head think of another Daredevil main villain like that besides Bullseye, and they've already kind of taken the route they've taken with that, which I think is a good route. So I am very curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I think the Kingpin kind of gradual changes something. I know me and you were both fans of Gotham, but I feel like
Yeah.
that's another show that did you keep the same villains over a long period of time, but you have things like the Penguin has his mayoral run and
hmm
stuff, and he has his going crazy arcs and stuff. And I think, like you're saying, it'll kind of line up very interesting with where we're getting Spider-Man and this other content, and obviously Daredevil Born Again season 3 is already on the way. I think doing something like what they've done to Kingpin, from what I've heard and from what you're saying, I think it does kind of set him up to finally be to the level of, if they were to integrate him with more of the MCU, hopefully, and work that out legally and how that would work, it would work. Because finally he would be on the level of, not that he wasn't before, but where he would
hmm
really, really work as someone who could be a really good antagonist and really, really threatening in that way because of that
He is a
emotional cutoff.
And he is a character who I do think thrives better in TV, because in a TV show you get a full like 9 episodes to really see him work. I know a lot of people want to see him and Spider-Man butt heads, because it's just in the comics, Spider-Man being in New York, Kingpin, they've crossed paths
Mm-hmm.
plenty of times. But it's one of those things that I don't necessarily would work out all too well in a movie. You don't really get that full 9 hours of episodes to really kind of lay the groundwork for what's happening with the character. I think that the TV format's been really, really good for Kingpin.
Yeah. The way I could see that working in my head is if something similar to those slow motion shots we saw in the opening of in the trailer for Brand New Day. But if we were to get an opening scene fight, and it was pretty much, if you just copy and paste the Spider-Man PlayStation 4 games opening Kingpin fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like it just establishes that he knows who Fisk is, and either he goes to prison or he gets away or something. Like, I think that's something we kind of need more of in some of these Marvel movies. You know what I mean? If they
Uh-huh.
were to get into that. Because I feel like all of those scenes end up turning into montages instead of like little gimmick like Spider-Man catching the bad guys thing. I forget what other, was it Far From Home that had that scene of Spider-Man and the burglars in the chandelier, and he's all like doing jokes and stuff. Like
Yeah,
he was
it's a
kind of doing
cut
like
scene.
Deadpool-y kind of jokes. It's a cut scene, but like
And it
those are
sucks
the
because it's
fun scenes.
it's one of the actually like more accurate, best portrayals of Spider-Man we would have seen in the MCU, when he's joking
Yeah,
to the cops about like, I'm going on vacation soon. You guys, how am I going to do your job for you? That's sort of like
right.
Spider-Man interacting with the city of New York as a whole, and kind of just seeing
Exactly.
him do more day-to-day stuff. I do think that it's much more needed in the MCU. And actually, that's a
Yeah.
good segue to what I was about to bring up about Daredevil, is they're taking a really cool angle at finally having Daredevil as much more of a public thing in the show. Like there's a couple lines like Swordsman, who shows up in season 2 and has a couple like uh couple good scenes. There's a scene where he's talking to Daredevil. He says, you're more of a like a symbol now. Like the people who are so against Fisk and his task force look up to Daredevil." And you see scenes of people like spray painting the double D over like a Fisk mural and stuff like that, which has always been a really cool thing that I've really kind of wish happened a little sooner is the city kind of rallying behind its heroes. You know, like you see them. Spider-Man is the only real one who I think it happens a lot with in Marvel. And the MCU, you don't really see it a whole lot at all. That people sort of like look up to these characters or get hope from these characters. So it's really cool to see Daredevil Born Again really taking that angle and having Daredevil be a sort of like inspiration to people. You know, he's not just hiding in the shadows, attacking criminals. He is sort of in a more public image. People do align with him and side with him.
Yeah, and I think that's also just, they have the groundwork to, like I said, really just blend stuff. You know what I mean? If Daredevil isn't in this next movie, you could still have the spray paint on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if they, because I think that's what we need more of. Like even if you can't do the crossover stuff like Spider-Man being in a TV episode for legal reasons, obviously, there's other ways to connect things and make that work, which I think is kind of what I'm hoping for going forward. I think they have a really good foundation of the New York stuff, kind of being pretty grounded right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just Spider-Man and then all these TV show characters right now. You know what I mean? And then we've been getting a lot of a lot of Marvel projects that take place like all over in these different places. But I think right now New York's just a really great, grounded, kind of connected vibe if they were to really focus on that.
Especially
I
with the
just think
Thunderbolts
they're
too,
waiting.
because you had the Thunderbolts movie, which took
Exactly.
the back half of that movie all took place in New York.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's like you're watching this Daredevil show and Fisk has a whole task force built around stopping vigilantes and he's rallying them up and throwing them in cages in his like illegal prisons. And you're sitting there, you're telling me Spider-Man is just watching this happen. Spider-Man doesn't care. He doesn't want to get involved with this. So
Yeah.
there is actually a throwaway line where he does mention a vigilante dressed up as a spider, which is obviously Spider-Man.
Yeah. That
But
was in the trailer.
you do sort of as a fan you want to know that they all interact with each other or at least exist in the same world, that they do know each other, you know? So I do agree
Yeah.
that I think going forward, I do hope the movies are able to do a little more of that, especially with a city like New York, which is so big for not just Marvel Comics, but in the MCU. I mean, your first Avengers movie took place in New York.
Yeah.
Avenger Towers in New York. You have all this groundwork there. You should see more sort of small little background nods to characters like that. Like in Daredevil, I'd love to see a Spider-Man mural somewhere in the background, you know? And I don't know if they can't do that because of, I don't know the contract law. Like, I don't know what they can and can't do. But you would like to see a
Yeah.
certain level of building upon that going forward.
Yeah, like you're saying, like I just think it's really like that's the stuff that's good. I know a lot of people will turn to that stuff and say it's like cameo junk or just like
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like the characters crossing over like is such a fun part of why these movies are connected compared to any other superhero movie thing. You know what I mean? That's separate. I mean, we're going through right now, checking out all these single projects from the early days of Marvel movies. And it's like, why not reap the benefits? Because who knows if they were to start a new Marvel universe or things like that, the next time you would have all these characters built up to this point. You know what I mean? And I think
And you have
even little
these
things.
comic
Was
stories
Kate
where,
Bishop
like,
mentioned at all in the show
No,
so
but
far
I mean,
with Swordsman being there?
no, but no, she wasn't mentioned.
Okay.
Swordsman's in it, and you actually do get a little clip of him back in his swordsman days, like in his costume.
Oh, really?
It's not the comic costume, because I'm pretty sure the comic costume is like this really bright green, overly exaggerated, like
Oh,
goofy
I thought he
rogue
was all
gallery.
purple.
Oh, he is all purple. You're right.
Is he
You're
all
right.
purple?
But
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
the costume he has in the show when the Flash is back is a little more similar to the Ronin costume. But
Gotcha.
he actually has, I don't know the actor's name, but they have a lot of really cool moments with him because he's sort of like the first person to go on trial for the whole anti-vigilante thing. And he has
Gotcha.
a lot of great lines. And then he has a really interesting fight scene with Daredevil where him and Daredevil are like fighting a bunch of task force guys. And it's really cool to actually
Gotcha.
see swordsmen fight. Because, you know, like we said, we see him in Hawkeye. He's much more of like a retired vigilante who doesn't really do much anymore. So it's really cool to
Yeah.
see kind of like stuff like that play out. And even though it's like you said, it's one fight scene, but it's cool to see a character like that actually get to show what they can do. And then, you know, like, I
Yeah.
never need to see swordsman ever again.
But
But it's interesting.
it just gives you insight. Like little nods like that tell you so much about what's happening off screen. Like I said, that's kind of my main thing with it just being in montages in these movies. Like even when Spider-Man like in Homecoming is just helping people and getting bikes and stuff, it's still montage like move on quick, which is fine. I understand why that is to keep the pacing in the movie, but even just little scenes like that of here's this fight scene, you're now able to infer all the history there. It's like the Ant-Man flashback scenes of
Yeah.
what's his name? Older Hank Pym. Of Hank
Yeah.
Pym when he was Ant-Man. You don't need to see a full TV show of him as Ant-Man when he was back in the day. But seeing that security footage gives you insight to like, that's what was happening at this time in the universe. And then you can kind of it just helps picture some of the things that are happening off screen a lot like easier. You know what I mean? Instead of just, I don't know, it just helps connect that stuff for me, which is why I enjoy it a lot.
I do think that Born Again Season 2 has had some issues with off-screen stuff that they're just kind of leaving out the fans. Like at the end,
That's what you were saying in the group chat.
the
Yeah.
end credit scene of Season 1 is the Punisher breaking out of his jail cell where Fisk is holding these vigilantes, and there's not a single kind of referential line to that at all. Which I get that maybe maybe they can't, or so much don't want to because he has them special coming out, and we're going to see that happen. But
Yeah.
you would just naturally you would hear that be brought up. Seeing the trailers, I was ecstatic for the new suit because the all black Daredevil suit is very, very common in the comics, and it's this first suit we see in live action that has the monogram on it of the double D.
Mhm.
But he just shows up with it in the first episode. Like the first time he pops up on screen in the first episode, he's already wearing it, which is awesome. You're like, oh, it's so cool. But then like you kind of don't. And then I've noticed through episode 4 is that it's actually his red suit painted over. Because as he goes through these fight scenes, there's getting more scuffed and more reds being revealed, which is a really, really awesome thing for the show to do. Because you don't see a lot of wear and tear on heroes' costumes besides Spider-Man. Because you get those cool Spider-Man shots of his suit all red where he's like pushing himself to the max. You don't get a lot of
Yeah.
shots of characters' suits taking wear and tear, especially with the MCU and the Avengers. So it's cool to see his suit getting scuffed. But I would have loved to seen of spray painting his red suit all black because he needs to blend in more. Now that he's on the run from not just bad guys, he's hiding from like anti-vigilante task force and the government itself. There could have been an awesome
Yeah.
scene of Matt deciding to paint his suit black. And like he said, it
And
would
you
be
get like
30
the
seconds.
speech. You
Yeah,
get the
some
speech over him painting it and like just the spinning shots of the helmet and stuff.
Like, that'd
And
be
because
awesome.
yeah, because now like I've already seen confusion starting up about it, about like if that was the suit that was in that group of helmets that we saw before. Like remember when we saw that shot of his other suits? There was an all black suit in there. But this is a red suit painted black. Like you said, so it can chip away and stuff. So just there is already confusion, even if it is minimum, of people saying that. But just having like a scene like that, and I think that would have established the tone switch. Like even though you're saying like it feels like a
Yes,
middle of the
100%.
season, you need to establish like this is a new beginning of a season. And I think a great way to do that would be something like a speech like that in the beginning or at the end of the first episode to really establish the tone that that character's moving in. You know what I mean? So I think that would have been a great opportunity there.
Speaking of characters,
But in general,
there's a couple of characters who I actually think they're hitting. Karen has showed up in season 2 a lot, and again, they have such an issue with writing her as a convincing character. Because again, now she's here, and this is her 5th season of Daredevil, and she still just feels like Matt's girlfriend, because she's not even a journalist anymore. She doesn't work for the paper. So she really is just kind of hanging around and helping him with like sneaking around and stuff like that, which sucks because it does feel like there's so much potential there as an actual person and a character that they're really just failing to capitalize on. Like there's a scene in season 3 where she's talking about Frank and she mentions that Frank like kind of was right sometimes about like when you hit the guys, they get back up, but when I put them down, they stay down. And she says something like, I'm not saying you should kill them all, but if we killed Fisk, this would all be over. Like realistically, it would end it all. And then Matt, her and Matt go back and forth. And then at the end of the episode, then they're breaking people out. She shoots and kills a member of the task force, just like they're fighting. And I actually was like, oh, that's really cool. There's going to be this sort of like dilemma between the two of them. They're going to have to like butt heads and talk about this, and then never gets brought up ever again. I was like, that seems like a failure to capitalize on that. But Matthew Lillard's character, who at this point is just called Mr. Charles, he is doing a great job. Like every time he's on screen, you're so captivated by what he's saying. The writing for his character is great. Matthew Lillard doing a great performance and sort of getting that out there. But he's also so mysterious that every time he's on screen, you just want to find out more about him and who is he, why is he here, and what's he going to do. And this is one of the few times that I actually think delaying that sort of reveal is helping the show greatly, because now they're going into 5 and 6. I think we're going to see a lot more of him. It is something that you really, really want to see. So I'm very excited to see what they're doing with Matthew Lillard's character going forward. I don't see him getting much use outside of Born Again season 2. Like I think his arc will probably wrap up at the end of the show, whether he dies or something happens to him. but I do hope they keep him around just because I do like Matthew Lillard a lot as sort of actor and what he's able to do. You know, he's able to bring this sort of like charismatic yet also kind of creepy and unsettling performance to all his roles. So I do hope they're able to keep Matthew Lillard around in some capacity for maybe even season 3 of the show. So I do hope that he has a bigger role going forward because he's doing a great job with what they've done with his character.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen any of that, but I totally believe you. I mean, he's been doing amazing, and I think he really has a really good entry level of fans, like just really liking him, like of all
Yeah,
communities of film and stuff, especially recently with that Tarantino stuff and everything. A lot of
I
people like
know.
just like Matthew Lillard. You know what I mean? Like
He's
in
played a lot
some
of
way or form, people have seen him. You know what I
you're
mean?
either like around my age and our age, and you oh dude, that's Shaggy from Scooby Doo.
Yeah,
That's so cool. Or
totally.
you're like my parents' age, like oh dude, that's Stu from Scream. Like that's awesome. This guy's great.
Yeah,
He's
or
played a
you're
lot of roles where
nowadays, and he's in Five Nights at Freddy's.
he's Michael
So
Afton from
he's
Five Nights at
everywhere.
Freddy's, which is even his best, which is his best
Exactly.
one. So he's
But like,
done
you know
so
what I
many
mean?
roles where there's such like this like just sort of like fandom care for him that it's really cool to see him in a show like this where you just naturally are
Yeah.
inclined. It's Matthew Lillard, so you want to know what he's doing. You know he's not going to be this like nobody character. You know he's going to have some sort of like
Right.
overarching kind of plot line. So it is really cool to see him, and I'm very excited for what he's going to do in the rest of the show because he's been very little. The 2 whole episodes he doesn't show up in at all, and you're kind of sitting there going,
Yeah.
"Well, where's Matthew Lillard at?"
Yeah. No, it's very cool. But I think in general for Daredevil Born Again season 2, I think we are overall seeing a decent shift in how Disney Plus is operating. I think overall, I mean, with this coming out around the same time as Maul Shadow Lord for Star Wars and things like that, I think we are kind of shifting back into Disney Plus TV had its big moment of being like, this is something new, we can keep audiences. And now, due to some either lower performing shows or shows that just don't know how to connect with the rest of this stuff and how they're mapping out or just struggling to get renewed, since it's rare to get past 3 seasons with any of these shows, I think we're really entering kind of an experimental phase again, where they're starting to really figure out, like, just, hey, if we want to do 1 episode less or 1 episode more for a season, how would we do that? If we want to bring in new actors, new people that are maybe a little more out there than what we did with our previous seasons, let's try that. You know what I mean? And I think even the logos on the chest, the interlocking Ds, I think it's really just like, let's take a step back and let's actually figure out what people want right now. And even if it's not exactly what they like, let's try to see how we can execute something adjacent or try it in a new way. And then kind of just build up their own niche audiences. You know what I mean? Because we did a long time of like trying to appeal to most Marvel fans through a lot of these shows. But I think projects like Wonder Man and stuff are going back to not everyone is going to like this show, but the people that do are really going to like this show, which I think is how a lot of these Netflix shows were at the time.
Especially with, like you said, Maul Shadow Lord and Daredevil, and now the Punisher special that's coming out, which is the Punisher
Yes.
special is going to directly tie into Spider-Man. You're taking characters that you know that people want to see more of. Like, you know, no one has ever been a Marvel fan, but like, no, I don't need to see John Bernthal as Punisher, or no, I don't really care about Daredevil. No Star Wars fan has ever said, no, I don't want to see more Darth Maul content. You're taking these characters that people really, really, really like and love, and you're giving them continuations on their stories, and not in ways that are just sort of like you said earlier, fan service garbage. Like, you know, they're doing a good enough job at writing accurate, not accurate, but what's the word? Yeah, accurate portrayals to their comic characters while also putting them in realistically understanding TV universes. And I think having grounded characters like Daredevil and Punisher has been good for that. Because like I have a coworker of mine who actually a couple weeks ago doesn't watch any superhero stuff. I was like, you should watch the Punisher show. I think you'd really like it. And she watched the first 2 seasons in like a week. I was like, that show's great. Like, that was awesome. There wasn't much superhero in it at all. I was like, give Daredevil a shot. And then she like liked the first season of Daredevil. You're taking these characters who are superheroes, and yes, they're connected to the MCU, and there is like some underlying superhero themes and stuff like that. But you're also appealing to your audience who may not like all that sort of like Iron Man flying around or Captain America holding Mjolnir and all that stuff. Like, so you have this opportunity to make real, similar to Wonder Man. Like, Wonder Man's a show that has superheroes in it, but it's not about superheroes. It's not a superhero show. You're taking these kind of characters and putting them in TV shows where you can watch them if you love Marvel, or you just want to watch a good TV show, you can watch them. And then with the Punisher
Yeah.
one shot coming up, hopefully that works out well. Now you have an opportunity to start making things that tie into your movies without being so I need to watch. Like, you know, when Disney Plus first came out, there was this sort of idea that like, oh, I have to watch all of these shows or I won't understand these movies. And like Multiverse of Madness, you kind of needed to watch WandaVision to understand that. Whereas now the
Yeah.
Punisher one shot is something that I understand it's not out yet. You can watch it because it will directly tee up his appearance in Spider-Man. But if you don't watch it, I don't think it's going to hurt your viewing of Spider-Man at all. So I think they have this nice little balance of potentially adding TV shows that can only ever enhance the movies instead of being so reliant on them, which I think would be a very good thing for Disney Plus going forward to kind of put Disney Plus TV back on the must watch because, you know, it's good again, it's exciting, and you don't need to watch it. You don't feel this sort of like inclination that, oh, I'm going to be missing out if I don't watch this show.
Yeah, totally. So I think it's going to wrap up our discussion overall. But if I could just say anything, Disney Plus, just be more experimental. You know what I mean? That is, people have your platform now. We're looking for what would make it interesting. I think the one shots are what's amazing for Marvel right now. I wish Star Wars would have something like that. Just give a random director that's made a cool niche project 45 minutes in the MCU. You know what I mean? Do stuff like that. Like Giacchino doing Werewolf by Night. Do more stuff like that. And really, I think a focus on tone and theme is what's going to get us out of the hole that we're kind of in the MCU. Like, I think Thunderbolts had an amazing control of tone, and I think Daredevil kind of has its own theme with the lawyer stuff and the religious stuff. It kind of carves out its own space, and same with Punisher with the military stuff. So I think that's what they need to focus on. And Wonder Man with the buddy cop thing. And I think that's the focus. I think the biggest complaint with She-Hulk overall is it should have just been more lawyery. But then again, we already had Daredevil, so I don't know. But I think going forward, just more experimental. Do random stuff
Also,
like
if I'll
that.
add on to that, let your actors have a little bit more control over their product. Like you send that thing in the group chat
Yes.
where Charlie Cox is like, I've read every Daredevil comic at this point. And
Yeah.
I didn't know this until I saw the trailer, but John Berthenol is actually helping produce the Punisher show, you know? A guy who's talked
Yeah.
countless times about how, like, when I got the role for Punisher, I did my history. I read all these comics. You obviously have some people more than others. You obviously have these actors who take a lot of pride in being these characters. Like Charlie Cox, John Berthenol, Tom Holland have all mentioned how much like pride they feel in getting to play these characters on screen. Give them the opportunity to let that creative input be shown in the shows. It can only make them better. You know, these are professionals.
It's a New
I don't
York
think-
thing, I guess. Because
I
we
guess
got
so,
Tom
yeah.
Holland was really going to them to figure out what they were going to do with the next Spider-Man movie and really trying to narrow in what he thought the fans wanted and what he saw in the comics and stuff. And I guess really the first time we saw that really integrated I can think of is when Loki came out. Because Loki had Tom Hiddleston as a producer.
Oh, it did?
You know what I mean? And
another guy who is,
and I do
he's
remember
mentioned
he
a lot
was
how much he loves playing that character, you know?
Yeah, but I think he really helped that show keep its pull on that character and not just go off on tangents that didn't matter. I think him maintaining that base of just being at the table and being like, well, here's what I think this character would do. And I think also Maul Shadowlord, every week we're seeing new messages from Sam Witwer talking about, well, I kind of thought the character would do
Love that
this,
guy.
you know what I mean? He's so cool. You know what I mean? Like, the people that will put on face paint to look like Darth Maul in the recording booth
I
while they're
saw
doing
that
lines.
earlier
You know what I mean?
on TikTok today.
And the people that will dress up like Daredevil for hours on end, or Spider-Man, you know what I mean, in these suits, they care. You know what I mean? And I think really reflecting on that and being like, what do they want to do? Let them get involved. It is keeping a tangible weight to a lot of this stuff. But yeah, so that is our mid-season interview with Mr. Wyatt here. If you guys would like to see more Daredevil content, we have a review for the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie coming out, and we have our old discussions for the Netflix show, and eventually we will get to Born Again Season 1 as a full in-depth thing. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. This has been Effortless Entertainment, and I hope you have been entertained. See you guys.
Goodbye, everybody.